Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into the 17th century, charting the really extraordinary course of Michiel Adrian de Ruyter.
A name maybe not everyone immediately recognizes, but definitely one worth knowing.
Exactly. By the time we're done, you'll see why he's hailed as, well, one of history's most masterful naval commanders. Our main source, our chart for this, is the comprehensive Wikipedia article on his life.
It's pretty detailed, yeah. Gives us a lot to work with.
Our mission here is to really get under the skin of why he was so significant, what made him tick, what are the most, compelling bits of his story. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, the first thing that jumps out is just where he came from. Vlissingen, 1607. But unlike a lot of high-ranking officers, no noble background.
Right, not born with a silver spoon, or rather a silver sextant.
Something like that.
Yeah.
His dad was a seaman, then a beer porter. Very different start compared to many commanders he'd later serve with or against. There are some, colorful stories about his youth.
But maybe not entirely historically accurate.
Probably not. Standard practice for famous figures, maybe. We do know he worked at a rope walk.
From twisting ropes to commanding fleets, that's quite something. Seems the sea was always calling him.
It does seem that way.
Yeah.
He started as a bosun's apprentice at just 11. 11.
Wow.
Apparently that was pretty standard for Zealand boys then.
Yeah.
And get this, he wasn't just on merchant ships early on.
Oh.
He actually fought as a cannoneer in the army against Spain during the siege of Bergen op Zoom in 1522.
So he had land combat experience, too. Interesting. Adds another layer.
Definitely. That mix of sea and land fighting probably shaped his pragmatic approach later. After that army stint, he went back to the Merchant Marine.
And worked his way up.
Steadily. Became a shipmaster by age 30. And despite, limited formal education, he learned languages, spoke French, and apparently fluent English.
Fluent English? For a Dutchman back then? How did that happen?
Well, there's this interesting bit from an anonymous English biographer suggesting he might have spent quite a chunk of time in Dublin.
Dublin.
Yeah, possibly between 1623 and 1631. Working as a factor, like an agent, for the Lamson brothers, who are also from Vlissingen. That's probably where the English came from. Maybe even a bit of Irish, who knows?
Imagine that. A young Dutchman in 17th century Dublin. That experience must have been invaluable.
Absolutely. The language skills alone would be crucial for maritime trade and, warfare later on. Plus, understanding different cultures, making connections. He also traveled as a supercargo sometimes.
To the Med, the Barbary Coast. More exposure.
Right, seeing different tactics, different potential enemies.
And the name de Ruyter. It wasn't his birth name.
No, he was originally Michiel Adrian. That's the Zeeland dialect version. De Ruyter seems to have been a nickname that stuck.
Meaning what?
Couple of theories. Could be from Ruiten or Ruten, meaning to raid. Fits with his later privateering work.
Makes sense.
Or maybe horseman, perhaps honoring a grandfather in the cavalry. Adds a bit of mystery to the name itself. He also married twice. First wife died young, sadly. Second wife, Nielce Engels, they had 4 children.
And before his official naval career, he was already captaining ships in a more, shall we say, aggressive capacity.
Yes, between 1637 and 1640, he captained a private ship hunting Dunkirkers.
Those raiders were a major headache for Dutch shipping, right?
A huge threat.
Yeah.
So that privateering gave him real hands-on combat command experience. After that, he skippered a merchant vessel, the De Vlissingen.
So solid merchant background, some privateering action, and then the official Navy calls.
1641. The Admiralty of Zealand picks him as captain of the Hayes. It was actually a converted merchantman, 26 guns.
And straight into action.
Pretty much. Sent off under Admiral Gazelles to help Portugal against Spain. And they made him Schoutbinock,
Which is?
Rear Admiral. Third in command. Quite a step up.
And did he make a mark?
He certainly distinguished himself.
Yeah.
Off Cape St. Vincent, November 41, against the Spanish fleet. The battle itself wasn't decisive. The mission kind of failed. But de Ruyter's actions got noticed.
But then he went back to merchant shipping again?
Yeah, the fleet was disbanded. So for about 10 years, 1642 to 51, he's back trading. Morocco, Brazil, West Indies. Apparently quite profitable. He even retired in 1651.
Retired. You wouldn't think it, given what comes next.
But then the First Anglo-Dutch War breaks out in 52.
Exactly. Retirement didn't stick for long. He was pulled back in.
Eagerly.
Doesn't sound like it initially.
Right.
Reluctantly joined the expanding fleet as a commander, like a commodore, leading a squadron of privately funded Zealand warships, served under the famous Lieutenant Admiral Martin Trump.
And his main job?
Crucial work, escorting Dutch merchant convoys through the English Channel. Always dangerous territory.
And that led to his first major fleet action as commander.
Yes, the Battle of Plymouth, August 1652. His convoy, maybe 60 merchant ships with his escort of, say, 20 to 30 warships, ran into an English fleet, about 45 ships under George Ayscue.
Bigger English fleet, then.
Numerically, yes. Their sources say many English ships were smaller armed merchantmen, not purpose-built warships, similar to some of de Ruyter's. Some English ships were definitely stronger, though. So how did it play out?
Well, this is where de Ruyter shows his nerve. Ayscue went for the merchant ships, the easy targets.
Logical, I suppose. Cut off the trade.
But de Ruyter didn't just try to shield them. He launched a counterattack directly at Ayscue's stronger warships.
Leaving the convoy exposed? That's risky.
Hugely risky. Prioritizing neutralizing the main threat over immediate protection, it turned into a real melee, fighting till dark.
Did the English numbers tell?
Apparently, the English hired merchant ships didn't really get stuck in, and de Ruyter's attack on the warships must have disrupted Ayscue's plan. Long story short, he saved the convoy.
Wow. That must have really made his name.
Absolutely. Instant naval hero status, showed real tactical guts.
And he fought in other battles in that war.
Oh yes. Kentish knock the Gabbard. He was right in the thick of it.
So when the top commander, Tromp, died at the Battle of Scheveningen, surely de Ruyter was the obvious choice to take over.
You'd think so. He was offered the supreme command, but he turned it down.
Declined? Why?
He felt he wasn't ready, apparently. Worried about clashes with other senior officers like Bit de With and Johan Evertsen. Shows a certain humility, maybe, or just smart politics.
Interesting. So what did he do instead?
He developed a really important relationship with Johan de Witt, the leading Dutch politician. De Witt saw his value.
Ah, a powerful ally.
Crucial. De Ruyter initially didn't even want to be the naval counselor to the new supreme commander Van Wassenaer Obdam, but de Witt talked him into it. Then, in 1654, he accepted the post of vice admiral of the Admiralty of Amsterdam, moved his family there, fully committed now.
Okay, so he's established, respected, connected. The first Anglo-Dutch war is over. What's next? The Northern Wars.
Exactly. His focus shifts, for a time, to the Baltic Sea and also the Mediterranean. Shows his versatility.
What was happening there?
Well, in 1655, he's sent to the Med. Protecting trade, yes, but also on a mission to ransom Christian slaves in Algiers.
A diplomatic element, too, then.
Very much so. He even had a tense encounter with an English fleet under Robert Blake, but managed to avoid conflict. Captured some corsairs, negotiated peace with Salé, diplomat and commander.
Multi-talented? And the Baltic.
1656. He leads a fleet there during the Second Northern War. Sweden was besieging Danzig.
Did he have to fight his way in?
Amazingly, no. He relieved the city without firing a shot. Pure naval presence and diplomacy. While there, he met King Frederick III of Denmark, and they struck up a friendship.
So he's building international connections, too.
Right. And he was back in the Baltic in 58 and 59, helping Denmark against Sweden again. He liberated Nyborg in 1659.
A significant win.
Big enough that the Danish king knighted him for it. After that, it was up to convoy duty in the Med for a couple of years, 61 to 63.
Seems like he was constantly on the move, dealing with different threats all over. Which brings us to the Second Anglo-Dutch War. Things really ramp up for him then.
They certainly do. But even before war was officially declared, there was a sort of preliminary round.
Where was that?
West Africa and the Americas. An English captain, Robert Holmes, had grabbed some Dutch trading posts in West Africa in 1664.
Before the war started. Provocative.
Very. Johan de Witt wasn't having it. He secretly diverted de Ruyter's squadron, which was actually in the Med at the time, to go retake them.
And did he?
Successfully retook all of them. Then he sailed across the Atlantic for reprisals against the English there.
Which led to?
The Battle of Barbados, April 1665. He attacked Carlisle Bay with 13 ships, the Spiegel as his flagship, traded heavy fire with the forts, damaged ships in the harbor.
A success.
Mixed. He inflicted damage but took quite a beating too. Suffered significant casualties, ship damage, had to pull back to Martinique for repairs.
So, not a clear win. What else happened in the Americas?
He captured some English ships, resupplied the Dutch colony at St. Eustatius, considered attacking New York, New Amsterdam as it was to the Dutch, but decided against it.
Then headed home.
Via Newfoundland. Raided it, captured merchant ships, even briefly took St. John's, then sailed back north around Scotland.
And when he got back to Europe?
He learned about the disaster at the Battle of Lowestoft. Van Wassenaer, the supreme commander, had been killed. The Dutch fleet was defeated.
A major blow.
Huge. And the response was clear. De Ruyter was appointed lieutenant admiral and commander of the entire Dutch fleet, August 1665.
The top job, finally. Though you mentioned Lieutenant Admiral was a shared rank.
Yes, technically there were 5 others with that rank across the different Dutch admiralties, but he was now the operational commander-in-chief.
And he stepped into some massive engagements.
Absolutely. 1666 sees the 4 days battle, June, Southern North Sea, an absolute epic.
How did it go?
A hard-fought Dutch victory. The English fleet was somewhat divided initially, and de Ruyter pressed that advantage. Then on the 4th day, a surprise all-out attack really hammered the English morale. They retreated.
A demonstration of exploiting opportunity.
Classic de Ruyter. But the English weren't done. Just a couple of months later, August 66, the St. James's Day battle.
Round 2.
Pretty much. This time, the Dutch took heavy losses. Narrowly avoided disaster, actually, and it caused some trouble internally.
Who?
De Ruyter and Cornelis Tromp, son of Martin Tromp. De Ruyter accused Tromp of insubordination, basically chasing off after part of the English fleet and leaving the main Dutch line vulnerable.
Serious charges.
Led to Tromp being dismissed. Shows de Ruyter's authority by this point.
Then came 1667, and something truly audacious. The raid on the Medway.
Ah, yes. Probably the most humiliating defeat for the Royal Navy in its history.
Sailing right up the Medway, into the heart of the English anchorage.
Exactly. Burned ships, towed away the English flagship, HMS Royal Charles. An incredible feat. Caused panic in London.
And de Ruyter commanded this?
Nominally, yes. Though the sources suggest he actually disagreed with De Witt's strategy, which was very focused on the Thames and Medway. He thought it was perhaps too narrow. Interesting tactical disagreement there. There was also a planned attack on Harwich.
Yes, but it was called off after the Battle of Landguard Fort, right near the end of the war. Soon after, the Peace of Breda was signed in 1667, end of the Second War.
You'd think he earned a break.
Well, De Witt apparently thought so too, or maybe he was just worried about losing him. He forbade de Ruyter from sailing between 67 and 71 to protect him.
Protect the national hero. Makes sense.
And get this, someone actually tried to assassinate him in 1669. A Trump supporter, apparently still angry about the dismissal.
Wow. The stakes were incredibly high back then. Politics and naval rivalries could be literally deadly.
So peace for a few years, but the underlying rivalry with England didn't just disappear.
Not at all. Trade issues, colonial friction, it simmered. Plus, you had Louis XIV of France getting very ambitious on the continent.
And that led to a strange alliance.
Very strange. England, traditionally wary of France, allied with Louis XIV against the Dutch. This kicks off the Third Anglo-Dutch War in 1672, the Ramp Jar, the disaster year for the Dutch.
And they faced a huge combined fleet.
Massive. Around 92 major warships for the Anglo-French side. De Ruyter had about 75 Dutch ships. Seriously outnumbered.
How did he even approach that?
Pure strategic genius. He had several aims: damage the English ships enough to force long repairs, play on the fact the French seemed hesitant to get into really close combat.
Exploit the alliance's weaknesses.
Precisely. Use smaller squadrons to keep the French busy while concentrating on the English, and crucially, use the shallow coastal waters, the shoals, as a refuge and a place to outmaneuver the larger Allied ships, prevent invasion at all costs.
Did it work?
Brilliantly. Look at the Battle of Solebay, June 72. Tactically, maybe a draw in ships lost. But strategically, a huge Dutch win.
How so?
He hit the English rear hard. The French van, under D'Estrées, didn't fully engage. It completely disrupted the Anglo-French invasion plans for that year. Caused real arguments between the Allies, too.
Pointing fingers already.
Exactly. Then in 1673, the battles of Schooneveld. Fought in those tricky, shallow waters he knew so well.
Playing to his strengths.
Totally. He neutralized the Allied numbers advantage, damaged their fleets enough they had to lift the blockade of Dutch ports, showed how vital understanding the environment is.
And the final big one of that war.
The Battle of Texel, August 73. Again, a smaller Dutch fleet, under de Ruyter, faced the larger Allies who were trying to land troops.
And he stopped them.
Decisively. Forced them to retreat. The English commander, Prince Rupert, was furious, reportedly accused the French Admiral d'Estrées of basically abandoning him.
So de Ruyter really saved the Netherlands from invasion.
Undeniably. His leadership was absolutely critical. They even created a new rank for him in February 73, Lieutenant Admiral General. Just for him. William of Orange became Admiral General.
And the war with England ended soon after?
Yes, Treaty of Westminster, March 1674. English public opinion had turned against the war and the French alliance anyway.
But the war with France carried on.
It did, though Louis XIV didn't really use his main battle fleet against the Dutch after England pulled out. De Ruyter was tasked with threatening the French coast, trying to divert their army.
And then another overseas campaign.
Yes, the Caribbean again, in 1674, led a big force to attack the French island of Martinique.
How did that go? Better than Barbados?
No. Worse, actually. He attacked Fort Royal, but the French were ready. Seemed to have been tipped off. The attack failed. Dutch took heavy casualties. Disease broke out on the ships. He had to call it off and head back to Europe. A real setback.
A rare failure for him. What was his final campaign?
The Mediterranean, again, 1675. Spain asked for Dutch help against the French in Sicily. There was a revolt in Messina against Spanish rule, supported by the French fleet.
So sent to help the Spanish.
Right. But the squadron he was given was apparently undermanned, undersupplied.
Yep.
He spent ages waiting for promised Spanish support that was slow coming.
Not ideal conditions. Did he engage the French?
Yes. He encountered the French fleet under Duquesne near the Lipari Islands in January 76. Then the Battle of Stromboli. He had fewer ships, less firepower, but he defended skillfully, damaged the French quite a bit.
Holding his own against the odds, as usual.
Then in April 1676, the Battle of Augusta. The Allies, Dutch and Spanish, now joined the attack to try and force the French ships away from Messina. De Ruyter commanded the leading squadron, the Van.
Leading from the front.
Always. The fighting was fierce. And during that battle, he was hit. A cannonball. Mortally wounded.
Oh no, after everything.
He died about a week later in Syracuse.
Yeah.
A really tragic end to an incredible career. But even in death, the respect he commanded. The French, his opponents, reportedly fired salutes as the ship carrying his body sailed past their fleet on its way back home.
That speaks volumes. An incredible mark of respect.
Absolutely. He received a huge state funeral in Amsterdam, March 1677, buried in the Nieuwe Kerk, elaborate tomb. Cornelis Tromp, his old rival, eventually succeeded him in 1679.
What a life. His legacy must be immense in the Netherlands.
Oh, huge. He's a proper folk hero.
Yeah.
Sailors, soldiers, they all respected him immensely. Gave him that nickname, Bistever.
Meaning grandfather.
Yeah, good old father or grandfather. It's affectionate, respectful, shows that connection he had with his men. Not just a brilliant admiral, but someone they felt, protective of and who protected them.
You see statues of him, right? In Vlissingen, his hometown.
Definitely. Looking out to sea. Streets named after him everywhere. And even outside the Netherlands, there's a statue in Debrecen, Hungary.
Hungary? Why there?
For his role in freeing Hungarian Protestant ministers from Spanish galley slavery. That Mediterranean mission back in the 1650s had far-reaching consequences.
Amazing. And naval tradition carries his name.
Absolutely. 6 Dutch Navy ships named HNLMS De Ruyter, 7 named after his flagship, Die Zeven Provinciën. He was also involved in founding the Netherlands Marine Corps in 1665.
So a foundational figure in many ways.
No question. He's been on stamps. There was that big movie about him in 2015. Even a town in New York State, De Ruyter, named after him.
So Michiel de Ruyter, from humble start to arguably the most influential naval figure of his century. His skill, his determination, it's an incredible story.
It really is. And that nickname, Bistever, grandfather, makes you think, doesn't it? What was it about him? Beyond the victories, what earned him that deep affection from his crews? Something more than just respect for rank.
Yeah, was it his courage? Sharing their hardships? His fairness, maybe even in disputes like the one with Trump? How did his methods, often winning against bigger fleets, set him apart? Maybe digging into those individual battles, Plymouth, Solebay, Texel, really looking at the tactical choices, tells you more about the man behind the admiral's coat.
It probably does. That blend of tactical brilliance and, well, something deeply human that inspired such loyalty. His legacy is certainly felt today. His life gives you a lot to think about: leadership, resilience, the sheer importance of sea power in history.
Definitely encourages you to dig deeper into those Anglo-Dutch wars, that whole 17th century maritime world. A fascinating period, and he was right at the heart of it.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.